When Waitrose was created, Mylan's chief executive, Senator Manchin's daughter, Heather Bresch, got a $31 million payout. During her time as CEO, Bresch drew outrage when the company raised the price of its life-saving EpiPen, used by millions to reverse fatal allergic reactions, when they raised the price by 400%. After the merger, Waitrose immediately began to cut costs, and now the plant is set to close on Friday. Some workers have already been told to clear out their lockers and leave the site after turning in their employee badges. Joe Manchin's ghosting the West Virginia union workers whose jobs his daughter helped outsource.
Welcome to the Armwood Opinion channel here on YouTube. Good to be back with you guys. Today we're talking about the connection between West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, Gangsta Capitalism, and voting rights. They're connected. They're interconnected. There's intersectionality here. What we are talking about is the fact that Joe Manchin, who on record opposes the For the People Act, which would restore provisions of the Voting Rights Act that were stripped by Republicans on the Supreme Court, and led by the Chief Justice and his Republican cronies. The argument that Joe Manchin made against the For the People Act was based on what he called states' rights, which was the idea that the federal government should not be involved in controlling what were local affairs, even though we're talking about elections, national elections. Major problem. Major problem. The 65 Voting Rights Act had a pre-clearance provision for states with a history of racial discrimination in voting. They had to pre-clear any changes in their voting rules, regulations, or procedures with the Justice Department before they could be put into effect. The court claimed that that was a historical anachronism, meaning that, that was back in the past. We don't have that problem in 2000, in the 21st century like we had in the 20th century. So Joe Manchin opposes that. The question is why? Is he a Southerner? Yes. And the Voting Rights Act was targeted at Southern states that were practicing Jim Crow before it was put into place. He's also owned by the large corporate interests, particularly Big Pharma, which has a big presence in his state, and who his daughter, Heather Bresch, is an executive, one of their companies, one of the Big Pharma companies. And she, in fact, was in a major scandal a few years ago. I believe it was around 2014 with the EpiPen, which is a pen used for medical injections. She raised the price by 500%. There was a huge reaction against it around the country. And as a result, she went on national TV and said that she was concerned about it, even though she was the CEO of the company, Mylan, which had raised the price of the EpiPen. And what it was used for was in allergy. So many people had this. I mean, this was all over the news. Joe Manchin has been caught on a recording with his financial backers, his donors, and they have expressed deep concern about modifying the filibuster. The Senate rule, which allows a minority of senators to stop any legislation from passing the Senate without a supermajority, and is the reason why, as of today, the For the People Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act have not been passed by the Senate and signed into law by Joe Biden. Because of the filibuster, Republicans, with the help of Joe Manchin and Arizona Senator Kristen Sinema, are able to block it. He has become what people have called the most powerful man in the Senate in the past few years because of the huge financial interests of Big Pharma behind him and other corporate interests, and his obstructionism of progressive legislation like voting rights. He claims to be progressive, but all he cares about are his own family's pockets.
The Intercept has obtained audio of conservative Democratic Senator Joe Manchin and a call he had with billionaire donors.
The truth is, there's no other group in the center that's putting the hard dollars together. And so you may see these big numbers with the campaigns, but that's a lot of soft dollars. It's a lot of super PACs. It's things they don't control. They love the hard dollars. And I would be hard pressed to think of any other group that can raise that sort of money. Our hope is at least 20 million over the cycle with this group, and then hopefully keep doubling it, as we go. So, we're waiting, right, Andy? I mean, we're gonna see what happens with this next vote, and we want to reward those people that get to party solutions.
It goes beyond party. This goes to the influence of money on the American political system. Many American office holders are in the pockets of large corporations. This prohibits them from making judgments based upon the interests of their constituents, the citizens who vote. They don't have adequate public disclosure of who their donors are, and they can get away with saying one thing to their constituents, to their voters, and doing something else when they pass or obstruct congressional legislation which benefits their voters. So this is not a Republican versus Democrat or Democratic Party issue. It's a big corporations versus working people's issue. So we have to get into the streets, contact our representatives, and force people like Joe Manchin and others in the Senate to look out for the interests of the people and get rid of obstructionist rules which are anti-democratic, like the filibuster. I've been saying this on and on and on because we are going into a very, very bad period in American history. And it's not just Joe Manchin. In the state of Georgia, the Republican state legislature this week has started discussing legislation to take away control of the voting process from the county of Fulton County in Georgia, where the city of Atlanta is located. The reason is simple. It's a heavily African American county. It votes Democratic. Republicans lost that county dramatically. As a result, Donald Trump lost the state of Georgia in the presidential election, and Democratic Senate candidates, now Democratic senators, John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, were elected in the runoff on January 6th. So Georgia has two progressive, liberal, whatever you want to call them, Democratic senators. The Republicans don't have the votes to win fairly, so they're passing legislation. They've already passed legislation to suppress the vote, cutting back early voting hours, cutting back on vote by mail, cutting out drop boxes. And now they want to be able to change the result of the election afterwards. Remember Donald Trump calling the Secretary of State Raffensperger in what appeared on its face to be a criminal act, and asking him to find him the 11,000 some odd votes so he could win the state of Georgia. This is what we are dealing with. It's horrible. It's horrendous. We must fight this. We need you to get out on the streets and do what is necessary so we get this done. All right? You have a good day, and remember, as I always say, resistance is not futile. Hit the like button if you like this video, and subscribe to get more progressive political commentary by John Armwood.